So why does gesture matter so much in storyboarding? Well, gesture is the spine of movement, and shape language is the structure that keeps it readable. Together, they're how you take a complex fight scene and turn it into a clear, dynamic sequence, even under real production pressure. Today, I'm going to break down the exact approach I used when I boarded the cliff fight in Blue-Eyed Samurai, the top of the cliff battle and the sequence after the fall. And I'll show you how gesture and shape language weren't just helpful, they were my lifeline. Okay, before we dive into the cliff fight breakdown, I want to slow things down for a moment. Because instead of taking you straight into the action, I want to give you the tools that will enhance the experience, tools that will deepen your understanding and expand your appreciation of what's happening inside the drawings. I want to give you a map. So, before we go into Blue-Eyed Samurai, cliff fight, I'm going to walk you through 3 things. 1. What gesture really does inside of a shot. The force, the intention, the emotional direction that keeps a drawing alive. 2. What shape language lets you see when things get fast and how to actually recreate it. How to break characters down into simple, readable, repeatable forms so you don't drown in detail while you're boarding under pressure. And 3. The principles that held the whole sequence together. The same principles that allowed me to block fast, plan smart, and then evolve the scene without losing the life inside the drawings. Once you have these 3 pieces, the breakdown is going to make total sense. You're going to see the choices, recognize the patterns, and you'll be able to take these tools and use them in your own work right away. All right, let's start the first piece, gesture. Let's start with the smallest building block of gesture. Gesture is simple when you break it down. At its core, gesture begins with an idea. Someone writes something. Someone describes something. You read a line in a script. You hear a moment described in a meeting. And as storyboard artists, we take that idea in, and then we turn it into a feeling. We feel the intention. We feel the direction. We feel the weight of what the moment is trying to do. And from that feeling, we move into expression. And that expression happens through a line. Gesture begins with a line. A single mark, the first visible sign of intention. That line might show direction, it might show force, it might show position in the frame, it might show the weight or the angle of the moment. But it always begins with one line. And then we begin to build. We add another line, and another, and another. And those lines begin to accumulate, and suddenly you start to see the impression of a figure. Not a detailed drawing, not anatomy, just the idea taking shape through lines. If I'm gesturing Mizu, I'm not drawing her yet. I'm drawing the feeling of her energy, her motion, the direction she's moving in. And if I'm gesturing the 5 fangs coming at her, I'm doing the same thing. Lines for their direction, their force, their momentum. Then I start letting the lines interact. I let them clash, collide, respond to each other, push and pull. It's all energy. It's all intention. It's all feeling made visible. And when the lines feel like they're in the right place, when the energy feels right on the page, that's when I know I can move to the next stage of the process. At this point, nothing is clean. Nothing is correct. It just feels alive. And that is gesture. Now that we've built the energy with gesture, the next step is shape language. Shape language is how we recognize things visually. It's identity at a glance. The same way you can spot a friend across a parking lot just from their silhouette, you can recognize a character in a storyboard or animation through their shapes, long before you see any details. Shape language is your visual shorthand. It reduces complexity into clarity. Once I lay down the gesture, the energy, the force, the intention, I lower the opacity and start building shapes on top of it. Those shapes give the movement identity. They make the character readable and trackable through the frame. And shapes aren't neutral. They carry emotion. A triangle feels sharp and aggressive. A circle feels soft and friendly. A square feels stable and grounded. Understanding the emotional side of shapes is essential for design, for character work, and especially for composition. Because composition is really just the arrangement of shapes in a frame. Even though a story lives in a three-dimensional world, we read it through a two-dimensional surface. So every character, every tree, every piece of ground, every weapon, they all become shapes moving across a 2D plane. If those shapes are too busy or poorly arranged, you get muddy, confusing images. You lose legibility. You lose clarity. But when shapes are simple and intentional and well organized, the whole shot becomes instantly readable. And once you establish a character's shapes, you keep them consistent, even if you stretch them, exaggerate them, or compress them for action. Shape language is what lets the viewer follow the story as characters move, collide, dodge, or cross the frame. Gesture gave me the energy. Shape gave me the identity. Composition gave me the clarity. And that's why shape language matters, because it lets the audience understand the entire moment at a glance. When you're starting something, whether it's a storyboard, a sequence, or a whole video like this one, there's always that moment of hesitation. That blank page anxiety. That feeling of, I don't know where to start. And even worse, I don't even know how this is supposed to assemble. Most people try to solve the entire problem in their head first. They try to mentally perfect the idea before they ever make a single mark. But the truth is, nothing becomes clear until it exists. So, make it exist first means you have to give yourself something to react to. Anything, a scribble, a note, a frame, a rough sketch, a spoken idea, whatever gets it out of your mind and into a space where you can see it. Once something exists, even in its roughest form, you finally have a surface to push up against. This is where the intuition wakes up. This is where the instinct begins to guide you. This is where you begin seeing possibilities. Because clarity doesn't come from thinking, clarity comes from arranging. And you can't arrange anything if nothing exists yet. If you don't know where to put a shot, put it somewhere that feels right for now. If you don't know the perfect angle, draw a placeholder. Sketch the version that comes to you first. Once the mark exists on the page, you can evaluate it honestly. Yes, this principle is mentally taxing, because you're forcing yourself to walk the path before you know the map. You will make a pass, step back, revise, reassess, redraw, refine, and do it again and again until something clicks. But that repetition is not failure. That repetition is navigation. And once you finally figure out where you're going, that's when your personal systems begin to form. Every artist eventually develops their own pattern, their own scaffolding, their own internal GPS for creation. My job with these modules is to give you a head start, so that instead of building these frameworks from scratch, you're starting off with tools that already work. Seeing it from above is one of the most deceptively powerful tools in storyboarding. And what I love about this is, you don't need to know how to draw to use it. You just need a line, a box, a circle, an X, an arrow. If you can do that, you can map a scene, and most people can do at least that. This principle removes the fear artists have about skill, and it removes the fear directors have about drawing. It puts everyone on equal footing. How I use it professionally. Whenever I walk into a meeting, especially with a director who has a complex sequence in mind, the very first thing I ask for is, show me the overhead. Not a drawing, not a frame, not a shot list. Just Where are the characters? Where are they going? What's the geography? What's the plan? Overhead sketches let people communicate the intent before we ever worry about the execution. When I work with creatives, I ask, draw X's for people, draw O's, draw arrows for movement, boxes for buildings, that's enough. And it always is. Because overheads aren't about beauty, they're about clarity. For the cliff fight, before I drew anything, I needed to know, where is the tree she keeps using as a pivot? Where are the 5 fangs coming from? Where is the cliff edge? How steep is the drop? What areas are safe? What areas are the kill zones? Because knowing the geography answers half the story questions. Why can't she run? Why does the fight feel so contained? Why is every movement directional and meaningful? Why does the tension build the way it does? The overhead answers all of that before I even thumbnail a frame. It is the purest form of visual thinking. It is the map before the journey. And once you have that map, the rest of the storyboarding process becomes exponentially easier. Evolving through revisions isn't just a working habit, it's a character test. Because the truth is, most people don't dislike revisions because they're hard. They dislike revisions because the first pass already cost them everything they had. When you've already climbed the mountain once, the idea of climbing it again, and then again, and then again, feels almost cruel. Not lazy, not weak, just human. That's why this principle exists. It gives language to the internal resistance everyone feels but never names. So, why do revisions feel like a burden? The first pass is always the Herculean effort. You push through the uncertainty, you overcome the blank page, you wrestle the idea into existence, you spend mental energy you didn't even know you had, and then someone says, "Great, do it again." That's when the fatigue hits. That's when the shortcuts become tempting. That's when the mind tries to negotiate with your standards. This principle steps in right there to remind you that the work isn't punishment. It's investment. Every revision is a reinvestment. Reinvesting into the vision, reinvesting into the project, reinvesting into yourself as an artist. Each pass pushes the frame closer to its real form. The energy beneath it, the clarity inside it. The revisions aren't about fixing mistakes, they are about revealing intention. Your first pass is you discovering the idea. So what it really comes down to is a choice. Not all artists choose revision. Not all artists choose improvement. Not all artists choose to re-enter the frame with curiosity instead of resentment. But the ones who do, the ones who willingly take the next step, even when it feels inconvenient or exhausting, those artists break through. Revisions reveal the discipline behind the craft and the commitment behind the vision. Thank you for spending your time with me. Next week, we'll step into the cliff fight itself and break down the process shot by shot. I'll see you then. If this breakdown was useful, like and subscribe. It helps the work find the people it's meant for.